Okay, imagine this. It's San Francisco, 2007. You've got these two roommates, and they're basically broke, can't make rent.
Staring eviction right in the face, yeah.
Exactly. So what do? They come up with this idea that sounds, well, honestly, a bit crazy. They decide to rent out their living room floor.
Not just the floor, but with air mattresses. To complete strangers.
Right. And one of those roommates was Brian Chesky. And somehow, from that really desperate moment, grew Airbnb.
A company now valued at, what, over $100 billion? It's
Yeah.
incredible. Millions of listings, 220 countries.
It really is. So our deep dive today is all about Brian Chesky's journey. We're going to unpack how his background, specifically in design, plus, just sheer grit.
And that focus on community.
Yes, exactly. How all that built this global phenomenon that really changed how we think about travel, or at least access to it.
Such a fascinating business case study. I mean, it really challenges the standard playbook for entrepreneurship, for growth. It wasn't a straight line at all.
Yeah. Definitely not. And to really get it, we have to start with Chesky himself. Born Niskayuna, New York, 1981. The key thing, his education. Rhode Island School of Design, RISD.
Which is huge, right? Not Stanford Business School, not MIT coding, industrial design.
Totally. His early passion was art, design. He even apparently wanted to be a Disney animator at one point.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that focus, that deep understanding of user experience, of how people interact with things, that became Airbnb's secret weapon later on.
That makes perfect sense because that design thinking, it lets you see problems differently from the user's point of view, not just, the business metrics of the code.
Can you maybe give an example, from the early days, where that design focus made a real difference, something a more traditional founder might have missed?
Well, think about the core problem they were solving initially. It wasn't just people need cheap beds. It was also, how do you make strangers feel comfortable staying in someone else's home? And how do you make hosts feel safe opening their doors?
Right, the trust element.
Exactly. A design
Yeah.
approach thinks about the entire experience. The photos, the profiles, the messaging, the reviews. It's not just a transaction. It's building a relationship, even a temporary one. A purely business approach might just focus on optimizing bookings per click,
That's a great point. Okay, so back to the origin story. Chesky and Joe Gebbia struggling with rent, and then this big design conference comes to town.
Perfect timing, right? Hotels are totally sold out.
Completely. So seize the moment. They buy 3 air mattresses, throw together a super basic website, Air Bed and Breakfast, they called it.
And people actually booked.
3 guests,
Yeah.
paid $80 a night. That was it. Their first, tangible proof this crazy idea might actually work.
So they had this initial flicker of success. But it wasn't like the floodgates opened immediately, right? What happened after that first weekend?
No, definitely not smooth sailing. So they officially launch in 2008, bring on Nathan Blatzik, an engineer, as the third co-founder.
Okay, the core team is formed.
But then crickets.
Right.
Basically, nobody was using it. Wasn't an overnight success by any stretch.
That's where the hustle comes in, the really scrappy stuff.
Totally. They famously flew to New York during some big event where, again, accommodation was tight. But they didn't just run ads.
No, they met their users face to face. Brian Chesky talks about this. We literally knocked on doors.
Took better photos of listings, gave hosts tips. It was super hands-on.
And that's crucial. As one tech journalist said, Airbnb succeeded because its founders did things that didn't scale. You can't automate that initial user feedback, that deep understanding you get from actually talking to people and seeing their problems firsthand.
That early grit, it was everything.
Absolutely. You have to be willing to do the unglamorous, unscalable work at the start.
Speaking of unglamorous and scrappy, this leads us to maybe the most famous story, the cereal.
Ah, yes, the cereal. During the 2008 U.S. election?
They needed cash badly. So they came up with this completely off-the-wall fundraising idea, novelty cereal boxes.
Obama O's and Captain McCain's. I mean, can you imagine pitching that? Yeah, we're a tech startup, funding ourselves with political breakfast cereal.
It sounds insane. But they sold them for $40 a box. And they made $30,000.
Which literally kept the lights on. Saved the company, as they tell it.
It's just wild. But that creativity, that sheer, refusal to die.
That's exactly what caught the eye of Paul Graham at Y Combinator. This super prestigious startup accelerator.
Right. Getting into IRS is a huge deal.
And this story, this hustle, apparently impressed Graham. It led to them getting invited to join the 2009 cohort.
He had that amazing quote about them.
Oh yeah, he called them cockroach entrepreneurs.
Which sounds bad, but isn't.
Not at all. It means they're incredibly resilient, impossible to kill. You can step on them, spray them, whatever. They just keep coming back. It's high praise in the startup world, believe it or not. It speaks to that persistence.
And Y Combinator gave them that vital first real
Yep.
investment, right?
Yep, $20,000 in seed funding. Not a huge amount, but enough to stop selling cereal and start, actually building the business more seriously.
Okay, so they've got some funding, they're starting to grow, but growth brings a whole new set of problems, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. As Airbnb got bigger, they started running into major headwinds. Cities weren't happy. Hotels really weren't happy.
Lobbying, regulations, legal battles.
All of that. Plus, internal challenges, user problems. You started hearing stories about scams or places getting trashed by parties, property damage.
Issues that strike right at the heart of the whole idea. If you can't trust the platform or the people on it.
Exactly. The whole thing collapses. So they realized they weren't just building a marketplace. They had to build something much, much harder.
Trust.
Bingo. They had to engineer trust into the system.
In Chesky's response, again, leaning on that design and community focus, they rolled out secure payments, user reviews became critical.
Host guarantees, insurance, 24/7 support. Basically building a safety net around the experience, using design to make trust feel inherent to the platform.
It wasn't just tacked on.
No, it had to be baked in. And, as one hospitality analyst pointed out, Chesky's real genius here was making the hosts feel like partners, not just cogs in the machine, not just suppliers.
That's interesting. Why was that so important, making them feel like partners?
Because it fosters community, it builds loyalty. If hosts feel valued, invested, like they're part of something bigger than just renting out a room, they're more likely to provide better experiences, uphold standards, and crucially, stick with the platform even when competitors emerge. It turned a service into like a movement for them.
That makes sense. Creating shared ownership almost.
In a way, yeah. A shared sense of purpose.
Okay, so they navigate these growth pains, build trust, and then comes the biggest test of all, 2020, COVID-19.
An absolute nightmare scenario for a travel company. Global travel just stopped. Dead.
Their revenue dropped, what, 80%? Virtually overnight, it was an existential threat.
Truly. And Chesky had to make some brutal decisions.
The layoffs, 25% of the company, that must have been incredibly painful.
Devastating, I'm sure. But what's really remarkable is Chesky's leadership during that chaos. He didn't just cut costs, he fundamentally rethought the business. He basically rewrote the playbook, as some put it.
Right. Can you elaborate on that? Like, rewriting the playbook, what did that actually involve? What were the key strategic shifts?
Well, first, acknowledging the reality. Travel wasn't dead, but it was changing dramatically. So instead of waiting for international flights to come back, they pivoted hard.
To what?
Local stays, people escaping the city for a weekend nearby, long-term rentals, suddenly everyone could work from anywhere, right? So people started booking Airbnbs for weeks or months.
Catering to that new remote work reality.
Exactly. They leaned into flexibility. They also streamlined massively, cut side projects, went back to basics, focused entirely on the core hosting experience.
Yeah.
It was about adapting radically and fast.
And somehow, it worked. They pulled through.
Pulled through is an understatement. By December 2020, they launched their IPO, initial public offering.
And it was huge, one of the biggest tech IPOs of the decade. From near collapse to this massive public debut in less than a year.
Just an incredible turnaround story. Speaks volumes about their adaptability.
So let's talk about Chesky's philosophy now. He's still CEO, and his approach seems consistently built around these pillars. Design, yes, but also culture and belonging.
He's very vocal about culture. There's that quote, "Culture is the foundation. It's not part of the game, it is the game."
What does that really mean in practice, though, especially for a company that grew so fast? How do you maintain culture when you're scaling like crazy?
Well, it means prioritizing it constantly, making it tangible. It's not just posters on the wall. It's about how decisions are made, how people are treated, what behaviors are rewarded.
And you see Chesky living it, right? He famously lives in Airbnbs for periods, testing the product himself.
Exactly, dog-fooding the product, as they say in tech. He also writes these really long, detailed letters to employees about the mission, the values, trying to keep everyone connected to the why.
Reinforcing that sense of shared purpose we talked about.
Precisely. And that ties into the idea of belonging. In an industry that can feel very transactional, booking a room, paying money. Chesky has always hammered this theme of belonging.
Making travel feel more human, more connected.
Yeah, infusing a functional service with this deeper human value. Trying to make it so that anywhere you go using Airbnb, you can feel Well, a sense of belonging. It's ambitious, maybe even a bit idealistic, but it's central to their brand and his leadership.
So, wrapping this up, what are the big lessons here? For entrepreneurs, innovators, anyone listening, Chesky's story, it isn't just about code or finance.
No, it feels more fundamental.
Right. I think the key takeaways are, first, solve a real problem, their own problem, initially needing rent money, needing a place to stay.
Absolutely. Second, start scrappy, do things that don't scale, and stay incredibly close to your users, especially early on.
Third, you have to proactively design for trust and community. It doesn't just happen, especially when strangers are involved.
And fourth, maybe the hardest one, adapt boldly. When crisis hits, don't just trim the sails. Be willing to rebuild the ship if you have to, like they did during COVID.
Well put.
And ultimately, Airbnb didn't invent travel, but they really did reinvent access to it. They made it possible for more people to travel in different ways, to stay in neighborhoods, not just hotel districts.
It democratized it, in a sense.
Yeah, I think so. And that quote from the VC partner sums up Chesky well. What makes Chesky remarkable is his ability to think like a designer, act like a founder, and lead like a human.
That combination, design thinking, founder grit, human leadership, that seems to be the core.
It's a rare mix, and it clearly drove their unique success.
So there you have it. From 3 air mattresses on a floor in San Francisco to fundamentally reshaping how millions, maybe billions of people experience the world.
It's quite a story. He didn't just build a company. He really designed an ecosystem, aiming for this idea that anyone, anywhere could feel at home.
Which leads to a final thought for everyone listening. Given Chesky's relentless focus on belonging in what's often seen as a purely transactional industry, how could applying that kind of design thinking focused on human connection, on trust, how could that change other industries? Think about sectors we see as just functional. Banking, insurance, utilities. What problems might you solve if you started by designing for connection, for belonging, instead of just efficiency?
That's a great question to ponder. How do you inject humanity and trust into systems that often feel impersonal?
Something to think about.